Okay, so now that we've created our particle system, we're going to create our particle shader. So let's go up one level, and right over here, within the same object, we're going to create a shop network in which we will add our shader. Now over here you can start by creating a material like this. Go inside, and there are two things that we need to connect. First of all, we need to assign a shader, a surface shader, which is going to be over here a VOP VIX surface shop. So if you type in VOP, you see this small list. This is the one that we're going to use to create and assign the color. Now the next that we need to create is over here, is a mantra geometry shader. So if you take this over here to the side, so right over here, mantra geometry, and this will give mantra a different command for rendering the geometry it sees. So right over here, let's go to the sprite procedural, and like that, mantra will be able to render the sprites or to render the particles in a correct way. So let's connect this one as well. Okay, now in the VOP surface, what we want to do is, for the color, we want to add a texture. So first thing that we need to do is to add a texture node, and then we're going to apply over here a parameter node so that we can access the texture that we want to have from outside, so that we see it over here. So let's go in. The next thing that we need to do is we need to set the UV basis. Now, since we have like these particles, it is generally not needed. They have like their default UVs, but as a good habit, I like to put the UVs each time. So UV coordinates, and you can connect the S and the T over here. This whole thing will result in a color, and we can connect this to the color of the particles. Now, since we want to have this additive, fire is additive, we want to make sure that the opacity value is completely set to 0, so it's fully transparent. So over here we create a constant node, which we're going to connect right away with a color which is by default black. Oops, like that. Okay, now if we go up, we have this whole system, we have this material. Now the only thing we need to do is to promote our material, so that we can access over here in a material shader the mandrill or the texture map, let's put it that way. Now the texture that we're going to use is the following. We're going to use the flame that we see over here. So it's just a black image with the flame in colors on top of that. So if we go inside, over here, you can select the one you need. So let's go up. Like this. And you have to take it from the place you've saved it. So flame in this case. Okay, so let's have a look on what we have so far. We have now the material with the operator, the network, right over here, and with the particle flame. So if we're going to go to the material, and we need to set it right on top, because it's like a shader which controls the whole type of rendering of the object. So we need to do it over here. So add right over here, particle flame shopnet, and the material that we've created. So let's have a look after we've created the flames, and let's see what the result is going to be like. So as you can see, we now have all these additive flames. But the problem that we have is that these flames are not fading away. And the reason for that is the following. We've created an alpha channel, but we're not using it right now. We're not using it in the shader. So we need to do the following things for that. First of all, let's go inside of the PopNet and check what kinds of attributes we have. As you can see, we have a few extra ones: sprite rotation, sprite scale, CD, which is color, and alpha. Now we're going to use the alpha that we see right over here. And the alpha we're going to use to multiply its value together with the texture, so that when it's completely at the end, that the whole texture is going to be completely black. So let's go up and let's go inside. Now before you can use that, you have to add this as an attribute. You have to declare the fact that you have that attribute ready. So alpha is an attribute that we're going to declare over here. So if you go now back inside of our texture, and we're going to create a parameter, you can make the parameter in such a way that it takes the alpha. So if you name everything like that, alpha, and so the parameter name, which is the most important, is going to be alpha over here. Now it knows that it can read the existing attribute on the objects over here, on the sprites over here. So what I want to avoid, if I now go up, you see that we have the parameter right over here, and that's something I want to avoid. You see it over here. So if we go right in here, now the alpha, I'm gonna make sure that it is invisible. So if we go up again, we see it has completely gone. So the only thing that we need to do now is to multiply the texture color with the alpha. And connect it like this to the color. It's complaining, and that's annoying. It's often happening. Just have to fiddle and play around a little bit. Well, it's still complaining. Now, normally seeing it shouldn't give a problem. Now what you can do as well is to convert this alpha into a vector. So if you do float to vector, it's probably going to work. Now the reason for that, why it might be complaining, is that it says I'm multiplying together a vector together with a float, and it might be that it doesn't know exactly what to do. So if we change this into a vector multiplied with a vector, we see the problem has been solved. Now we still have a bad parameter reference, so if you promote materials like this, let's see what we're going to have. Now we do have the flames, and those flames are also fading away, as you can see right here. Now the only thing that I just want to change as well, if we go closer, I think perhaps it is good enough, but I'm not sure yet. Well, it's pretty okay for a flame. Of course you can still adjust and tweak the flames afterwards, but that's something I'm not going to focus on right now. Some other students proposed also the following, which was that they've used the texture in itself has an opacity value, something you can do as well, and it gives a little different result. It doesn't give like this extreme overshooting of the flames. Well, you can do this if you want, there's no problem with that. Okay, so let's go up. And so this concludes it for the very first particle system. Now, going to create another one, which is going to be our particle distortion. So copy and paste this, and let's rename this to particle distortion. Now in this particle distortion, we're going to change a few of the settings. So we're going to make sure that these particles are going to move up much faster, and that they also have like a different rotation pattern and everything else. So let's go inside of these, and let's go inside of the PopNet. And the thing that we're going to change right here is already by the attributes over here. Let's say that the variance is a little bit higher in this direction, or in all directions, perhaps it's even better. Let's do it like that. And also over here with the force, they're going to go up much faster. So what we're having are these particles moving up much faster than the other ones. So let's change this again. Perhaps we can even increase it much more. Something like this. Well, I think that's a little bit overpowered. 1.5. Still a little bit too much. 1.1, something like this perhaps. Yes, this seems to be okay for me. Now we do want to have distortion in all kinds of directions, and we want to make sure that these particles are just wide enough to give us the distortion that we want to have. Now we're gonna change right over here the size control. So instead of making them smaller, they're still going to grow bigger all the time. So we're gonna get something like this, more or less. So let's see what this will result in. So these particles and growing up like that. For the color, we can change over here the ramp, so that's those particles, those distortion flames, are going to start being visible just a little bit later. Perhaps make it even later again, so that we have distortion always more or less on the top. So let's move again, just a little bit like that. And then we have this distortion. So we can delete this point, and we can have the distortion like that. Okay. Now I think we've set everything for the particles, and we can go into the ChopNet and we can change the image. Now let's first change the image, and I'll show you what the image is going to be like, which is going to be over here, the deformer shape. So this is some kind of pattern that I've just drawn, and this pattern we're going to use to deform the image behind. So let's change this by going to Deformer tool. Now you've seen that if you have show sequence as one entry, you see all these things showing up with a $F sign. Now you shouldn't use this, because if you use the $F sign to retrieve those images, then it might be that that your image is only going to be visible on one particular frame, and you don't want to have that in this case. So make sure that you switch this off. Accept. Okay, so this concludes the second part, and in the third part we're going to create a new shader for the particle system.